over the What's up? What's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Against All Odds. I'm Rebel Ray.
Somebody is out. And I'm R. Collins.
And
How you guys doing?
How y'all doing? And as you know, we're always working on some technical difficulties.
We are definitely doing that right now, for sure.
Happy Black History Month.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? I had to represent with my own hair. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have our own hair up underneath these weaves. Praise the Lord. God is good.
God is good all the time, and all the time God is good.
So we're going to continue the courageous conversation with James Hewitt's story, right? A lot of you all, it affected a lot of you all, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have that raw information at hand and being able to hear the story from someone who is a survivor. It's important that we take the time to acknowledge that.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. You know, it is very important that, you know, a lot of, especially in the Black community, that we really take heed to everything that's being said on this podcast tonight. We have a bunch of professionals here in their field, and you know, they're ready to give their expertise on a lot of the things that, you know, go on behind the scenes, you know, and to break it down a little bit.
And so as we prepare to actually hear from them and they're getting their points and introduce them, we're going to bring James back on. James is going to tell the half part of his story. So we left off at age 8, right?
Yeah.
James was openly talking about how he was incarcerated at the age of 8.
Yes.
And that he actually found his way around the system. So as we bring him back on, we want to be mindful again. Vero discretion is advised.
Please.
There's going to be a lot of information that may be vicarious. There may be vicarious trauma that may come from it. And if you're triggered, please take your space and be able to check in with someone. And so that's always important.
Very important.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we can bring on James, and we can just go ahead and get started.
Hi.
And everybody else.
Hi, panelists. So before we introduce the panelists, again, we have James Hewitt here, the miraculous voice that was from last week that really showed us an image of healing and what healing looks like. And it's important that we all take the time to recognize and acknowledge his healing.
Yes.
I am getting a little feedback, and I assume that's probably my guest. So if my guest mics aren't muted, I'm asking that you mute it, but until you are talking. Okay, so James, take us back. So we're at age 8 or 9, and you're moving through your life, correct? And what was the next thing that happened in your healing journey?
Well, you know, as we was talking about at that point at 8 years old, and going through being violated and how that caused a root of anger and bitterness on the inside of me, which drove me into a place, you know, of acting out in fits of rage and violence, in a place where, you know, just so wounded and hurt on the inside, looking for acceptance, looking for somebody, you know, to hear about the hemorrhaging that I was going through on the inside, you know, wanting somebody to feel what I felt because they wouldn't listen. So, you know, it drove me into criminal acts and It drove me into the street and connecting with people that was gang affiliated and started uh, committing crimes and vandalism and burglary and all those different type of things that led me into, as we were talking about the last episode about going to juvenile hall for the first time at 8 years old from school, and from there it led me on a on a journey uh, where I end up being in juvenile hall over seven times in 7 different juvenile halls across the state of California, and got tossed into the group home system, the foster care system, uh, boot camps, and then ultimately landed a 6.5 year sentence in the California Youth Authority. Ended up being the youngest person to be committed to the California Youth Authority at that time, from 10 and a half to 16 and a half, and being in a place in that atmosphere where I had to literally fight for my life every day. I didn't even have time to process, the being violated and sexually abused. I couldn't even process that hurt and that pain. I had to defend myself and worry about surviving every day. So, layer of hurt on top of layer of hurt, layer of dysfunction on top of layers of dysfunction, and it finally at 12 and a half years old, I ended up having a nervous breakdown. What kid have a nervous breakdown at 12 and a half years old? But then you have to ask yourself, a typical kid at 12 is playing with toys and watching cartoons and in the safety of the confines of their home with their family, not living in an open dorm in a one bunk, two bunk, triple bunk, and worrying about if you're gonna wake up in the morning, seeing people get stabbed and bleed out in the middle of the night, seeing people get jumped, repeatedly in the middle of the night with locks in the sock, soaps in the sock, that does a lot of trauma on the mind, already as it is 12 years old, but yet a little 7-year-old boy that's afraid and that's confused and that's crying out for help on the inside, that inner wounded boy on the inside at 12 years old, crying out, but having to put a wall up, and so that drove me to insanity. And at 12 and a half, I had a nervous breakdown in the correction facility, ended up in a suicide ward and a mental ward in the prison facility. And I was at a place where I just was numb of life, felt like I didn't have no meaning, felt like, it wasn't no reason for me to live. So at that point, I attempted suicide, tried to take my life, not only one time, didn't try to just kill myself 2 times, but 3 times I tried to take my life. But I just thank God, because one thing about it, that when you got purpose and destiny on your life, the devil can't kill you, and you can't even take your own life. So I'm so glad that the enemy can't kill what God's anointed to live. And but even in the midst of that, I found myself in a padded room. I found myself in a straitjacket. It got so crazy that I was beating my head against the wall, and when you're in a place of hurt and pain on the inside, and you don't know how to process that, and you don't know how to find no relief, you will do anything to try to find some type of outlet to deal with the pain. And so, because the pain was so overwhelming, I just began to beat my head against the wall. They began to hog tie me like I was an animal. I was already as a little kid labeled a number, branded a number, not a name, 79786. Been over almost 20 years, and it's forever embedded in my mind, that number that they gave me. And already my dignity was taken, my sexual innocence was taken, the enemy tried to take my identity through the sexual abuse, but now my self-worth was taken, and just at a breaking point. And I remember at that point, at 12 and a half years old, in a mental ward in a little box. I didn't have nobody to talk to. It was in a place of isolation. Didn't have nobody that could reach out to me. You know, I was reaching out for answers, reaching out for relief, reaching out for somebody that would hear me. You know, because from that age, 7 to 12 and a half, being dropped, by the very people that were supposed to be there to carry me, to nurture me, to help me develop in a healthy environment, but being dropped by life, dropped by parents, dropped by family, and feeling like a Mephibosheth. And
Right,
right,
right.
and
So
but
I think a lot of a lot of the comments that were left, a lot of people wanted to know, where was your mom in all of this, right?
Damn.
Where was the social worker? Who was actually working with you to try to bring you back to a sustainable functionality?
yeah, well, like I was saying on the last show, that my mother was a single mother working 2 or 3 jobs, and at that point, I didn't understand as a kid, why I had to go through certain things. So it built up a resistance toward my mom. But being older and looking in retrospect, I can appreciate, the fact that my mother tried to raise 4 children by herself, and it led actually to my mother uh, having a brain aneurysm, all of that pressure, and she's been paralyzed in a convalescent home for over 15 years now. And but at that time, like I said, my mother was occupied with, put just trying to take care of the bare necessities for her, from her children, for me and my siblings. And so she really didn't have time, to spend time with me. And as kids, we don't, you know, we try to entertain children with toys and all those different things, entertainment. But kids interpret love by a 4-letter word, time, time.
That's
And
Mm,
true.
my mother didn't have time, to spend, because she was trying to, provide for us. And so that created a resistance. And the time that she did have, you know, when something happened, I was always blamed. I was a black sheep of the family, you know, and it just built up a resistance. And then, her choice and her selection, a poor selection of men that she allowed in our home, and allowed in her life, and to see her undergo physical abuse, and be beaten, ribs broken, busted lips, and all that stuff, and just having to take that in, and to
Can I ask you,
couple.
James, how many men went in and out of your life when dealing with your mom? Like,
Wow. I mean, as I can remember at that time, about 3 or 4 different men, uh, at that time, between the 7 and 10, you know, uh, yeah, about 3 or 4, and most of them was abusive. Few of them was alcoholics. My mother was looking for love in all the wrong places, because there was an emptiness in her from some of the things that she went through as a kid. But
mhm.
I realize that now, and but yeah. So my mother was there, but I feel like she was there, but she wasn't there, in the sense that she didn't have time to really spend time with me. And the time that we had, it always seemed like it was a conflict. It was all, I was getting in trouble, at school and different situations, but I was crying out,
Right.
for help, and like I said, the last show, I was saying that we're really caused me to really be contentious, and towards my mother, is that when that family member violated me, and I can sexually on multiple occasions, and I finally had the courage to come to my mother and tell her, and the police was even called out in response of me being sexually abused by that family member. But then at the same time, no charges was placed against this
So
person.
where was child welfare? That's what I want to know. Where was the CPS?
CPS. Uh, well, at that time, CPS came out uh, they came out, but they really didn't. It wasn't really it was kind of a poor response to the situation, because you know my mother, my mother kind of made light of the situation, and my behavior at the time didn't really, it was really kind of, it was bad. So I don't, it kind of overwent out, it kind of overlooked the situation, the severity of what I went through, and so they was called out, but it really nothing really came about from the situation really with social services, and but eventually, as I was getting in trouble, at school and all those and getting in trouble, eventually CPS did step back in and they put me in a. That was the first time that I went to a foster home, and at that point, my mom had told them that she didn't know what to do with me, so they put me in a foster home because I was really angry, and I was threatening people, pulling knives on people at 8, 9 years old. So
Well,
so
it's
she,
to be it's to be
huh?
under, it's to be understandable.
Yeah.
What you were going through. Now we're going towards the CYA. How did you begin your healing journey? A lot of people are online here. What services? Who did you connect to? What church? How did you begin your healing journey? You to a relationship where you were able to have a functional relationship. A lot of times individuals who struggle with sexual abuse, they have a hard time um,
Very true. Yeah.
finding a relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, for me at that point, uh, I was sharing how I finally went from juvenile hall, graduated, group homes, foster homes, boot camp out, finally to the state juvenile state correction, the California Youth Authority. Um, yeah, I mean, I really, I was in a place where I was always fighting, for my life, fighting for survival, fighting for affirmation, fighting for validation. I was always in a fighting mode, one way or the other. In my childhood, in my early teenage, preteens, and early teenage. So I was always in a fighting mode. I built a wall up. I put a wall up, that people wouldn't be able to come in that close to me, that I wouldn't be vulnerable, with other people, that people wouldn't have an opportunity to violate me like I was violated on multiple occasions as a kid. At that point, I became hard in my heart. At that point, I became, very numb, and I closed out my feelings and sensitivity towards other people. So it was hard to let people in. And but I remember at that point, at the breaking point, at the tipping point, that actually was was the very beginning of a new beginning for me. And at that point, at 12 and a half years in that mental ward, like I said, uh, had a nervous breakdown at 12 and a half years old, and them shooting tranquilizers in my behind, and to the
Wait,
point where,
what do you mean shooting
They call
tranquil?
it they call it booty juice, but it's a sedative that's
yeah,
used that was used and still is used in the psych ward for children when they have those episodes.
Wow.
And so they do sedate.
So they drug you up to solve an internal problem.
hmm
That's
yeah, it's not solving the problem.
no, I mean they're trying to solve the problem by
Yeah,
drugging you up. Is what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying. But obviously it's not solving the problem,
yeah,
because it's an internal issue that's going on somewhere, you know.
yeah.
Um, what was now let me ask you this. How was it for you when new men came into your mom's life? Like was it hard for you to trust them? Was it easy?
Man, I'll just be honest. Man, every man that came into my mother's life had hell to pay with me. So, first of all, I already felt some type of way because as a little kid, my mother, divorced my dad. My dad was in, so I just didn't understand that why she wasn't with my dad. She was with all these other low life men, these no good men. But at the same time, my dad was no good. He was in and out of prison, hooked on drugs, was never really in my life. So he was no, he was no
So,
good,
so did you have anybody that came along that was around for a long period of time that you did build a trust with? That
You know,
I'm speaking in regards to your mother's, anybody that your mother brought around in a relationship.
no, actually, no. The only male figures, positive male figures that I had in my life, it wasn't no long-term relationship that I was able to build. They were, there at different points. Like my uncle, he was a pastor, and I would see him on occasion. He would come and pick me up for church sometimes, but that wasn't a consistent thing that I had. My grandfather, my father's father, he died when I was about 5 or 6. He was a positive role model, but he died. He was a pastor as well. And so I really didn't have no positive male role models in my life, you know.
And no one came to KJC or the California Youth Authority.
I'm sorry, say that again.
No one came to Juvenile Justice Center or the California Youth Authority. No mentorships, no individuals that worked with some of the young men. Did anyone
No,
come?
no, actually, you that time and time again, already being a little kid and feeling abandoned and rejected by your family and feeling like everybody has given up on you and thrown you away. Uh, I didn't really have no family come and see me for 6.5 years. I can count on one hand how many visits I had in 6.5 years from family or anybody from the outside. But I thank God and I give God glory because you know uh, that when you don't even have family, God will send people into your life that will be family and show you love and show you care and concern like family. One thing I realized that everybody that's kin to you or is not always connected to you. And I thank God that God sent divine connections in my life, even in the midst of all that chaos and confusion in the correction facility that I was in. And I give God praise for now he's a very honorable, highly esteemed Bishop Troy Dockery of Greater Christ Temple in the city of the 209 Stockton. I see some of my brothers on here too.
209.
Some of my bro Jason and Travis, man, it's good to see y'all.
Yeah.
And but I thank God for Bishop Troy Dockery and for stepping up in my life. At that time, he was a GS. He was a guard in the California Youth Authority facility I was in back in that. I'm young now. I ain't old, but I got old. They say I'm about 90 in the spirit. I'm 34,
You've
but
been through
that
some things. You've been through some things.
but that was back from 97 to 2002. I was locked up in the CYA. And so back in that, in 97, throughout that time, Bishop Troy Dockery, he wasn't, he was, I believe he was assistant pastor or even youth pastor going into assistant pastor to see what God has done in his ministry. But he was a guard then. And I don't know, it was something about him that I seen how he interacted with the other inmates,
Hmm.
that, it was something about him that drew me to him. Like, it was already, in that culture, we, there's very limited trust of anybody,
Right, right.
outside your circle of gang affiliation.
Mm.
We certainly don't trust the cops, in that culture, and, but, uh, Bishop Dockery, as a guard in the facility I was in, it was something about him that caused the other young men to be drawn to him, be trusting of him.
Y'all tag Bishop Dockery right now. Tag Bishop
Yeah,
Dockery
yeah, you
right
gotta,
now.
yeah,
Give a
show
shout
Bishop
out.
love.
Give him some love.
You gotta give him some love. I thank God for him. That's one of my heroes of faith. Literally,
Hmm.
he stepped in right on time. God has used him to be a
Testing.
lifeline for me. Among another woman of God, Sister Jane Pratt, and that's amazing. A Caucasian woman, that came into my life already not having trust and not respecting women authority because of my torn relationship with my mother, but you know, dealing with race and all that stuff.
Right.
But I thank God for Bishop Dockery. Uh, my first experience with him was when they when the staff on my unit called for backup because I was out of control. Had got in a fight with another inmate, and uh, and I was still out of control. They was trying to contain the situation, and and I had built a history of being out of control, not only fighting other inmates, but trying to fight the guard, the staff, using weapons, whatever I could use to attack them. And I was just full of rage and full of anger. But I remember when he came on the scene and they had pepper sprayed me and took me
Wow.
down.
Heard you?
Oh yeah, that was I've been pepper sprayed, mace, gas, fog, all kind of
Oh my God.
yeah, all of that.
So
But
you have so many layers of trauma,
yeah,
and how people have responded to you has just been uh your life is an amazing testament, right? And so as these individuals played a role, right? Someone on the comment, and that's Micaiah Martin Strickland. We'll be getting to her husband in a minute. Um, she asked, "Did these institutions play? Did they do more harm than they did good for you?"
Ooh, well, like I will say, you can. Those institutions was not built to bring transformation
Mm.
and what they call the system calls rehabilitation.
Uh-oh.
They was not built for that. They were built just to contain the problems of society, what they call us. And yeah, it was an atmosphere that reinforced criminal activity and criminal behavior. So, and we see that because actually, I thank God that in
I know.
it's been some time now, but I've been able to work with the California State Library and speak at the Capitol, the state capitol in Sacramento, on numerous occasions before the senators, Congress, working with the California State Library to travel across the country actually to look at other juvenile correction facilities and systems that other states had, because California, we have the highest recidivism rate of young people re-entering in to correctional facilities. So when
Yes.
you look at the recidivism rate, I don't know what it is now, but when I was locked up, when you look at the recidivism rate, how high it was, you know that those institutions was not designed and built to cater to and to help bring positive change. And so yeah, no, the facility didn't help me, but I thank God that God had some people like Bishop Dockery
Now,
in there to reach out to me.
now I got a quick question. So do you think that's when your healing started taking place when you went under Bishop Dockery? Is that like when you started? When did your
Yeah.
transition happen?
Well, like at 12 and a half, when I had that nervous breakdown and in that suicide ward with padded room straitjackets, them shooting me up with tranquilizers. Only company I had was the roaches and the rats to talk to. And I cried out to the Lord in desperation because I was just at that point. I didn't want to live, but I didn't want to die. But I just cried out to the Lord. Like the Bible said, David cried out to the Lord in his distress, and God heard him and delivered him. And I cried out to the Lord. And I remember that all I can explain to you, the encounter that I had with Jesus in that little box, in that little hole, in that dungeon of depression,
Yes.
in that tomb, that cave that I was in. The only thing I can tell you is that God went past the barbed wire fences. He went past the steel metal doors, and the presence of God blanketed over me. And all I can tell you, it was like liquid love that went over me. And that warmth of God's presence went through from my head all the way through my feet.
I'm
And all
feeling
I can
that.
tell you is
Feeling
that
that.
it was like 1,000,000 pounds of weight that was lifted off of my shoulders.
Wow.
I felt free for the first time in my life at that point.
So
And I
God came to you
remember,
in that cell while you were in solitary confinement. That's when God came to you, touched
yeah,
you, and lifted some of those burdens that have been holding you down.
Yeah.
At the age of, you said 12?
Yeah, at the age of 12 and a half, at the age of
That's
12 and a
powerful.
half, I had that encounter with the Lord. And at that point, I heard God's voice so clearly, like we're talking now. I mean, God spoke so loudly. And the Lord told me, he said, son, if you give me all of the pain, if you give me all of the hurt, if you give me all of the bitterness, if you give me all of the anger, if you give me all of your brokenness, if you give me all of the suicidal thoughts and the suicidal tendencies, I wasn't only suicidal, tried to kill myself, but I was homicidal because I already premeditated that when I got out, I was going to kill the people that violated me sexually and abused me physically. And so God said, if you give me all of that, I'll take all of your hurt. I'll take all of your pain, your brokenness, your battered heart, your bleeding heart, your wounded spirit. He said, I'll take it all and I'll use it as a weapon to destroy the kingdom of darkness. And not only will I use it as a weapon to destroy the kingdom of darkness, but I'll use your pain as a platform to declare healing and wholeness and restoration
Come on
in my
now.
life to so many people that have become victims of sexual abuse and that are dealing with demonic strongholds and that are free on the outside, but they're imprisoned on the inside in their own mind, in their own emotions. And God, and when God began to speak to me, I'm telling you, something broke in me. And that was the start, and that was the beginning of the process of healing for me. Uh, at that moment when that happened, when God began to remove the weights and the burden and the care off of me, when I had that divine encounter with the Lord, that was the beginning of the process. But God still had to show me how to forgive because I still had so much unforgiveness in my heart.
And so James, that's another question. This brings me to my next question. So when you came out of that situation, did you see any of the perpetrators that violated you when you came out?
And how did you handle that?
And how did you handle that?
How did you handle that?
What you talking about when I got out of prison?
Yeah, because you said you had a breakthrough, right? And I just want to see what your reaction was after that breakthrough, when you saw those people, or if you saw those people.
Yeah.
And how did you handle it?
Well, that time span, when I had a breakthrough, I was 12 and a half. I didn't get out until 16 and a half. So God definitely had to take me through a journey of healing, and he had to take me through a transformational developmental process in the midst of, still having to deal with everything I had to deal with in that atmosphere of a prison situation. So I still, even though I experienced God and had a transformation experience, I still had to go through a process because even though God began to come in on the inside, my mind was still warped. My mind was still in the same condition from all the things that I went through. When you go through something traumatic like sexual abuse, molestation, rape, there's something that happens to your growth process. It's stunted, it's stifled. In psychology, it's called deprivation dwarfism. And deprivation dwarfism means that, when something significantly like a traumatic experience like that happens to you, it causes your growth and your development to be stunted and throttled. And deprivation dwarfism meaning that because you're deprived of certain certain things like love, like acceptance, like a sense of belonging, all those different things that we're supposed to get in our childhood development, that because you're deprived of that, your growth is dwarfed. And so, and so this is what a lot of people are experiencing. They're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. They're adults on the outside, but they're still a wounded child on the inside. And so the thing about it is, my healing journey started in that little box, but I was still when certain things happened, it triggered. When I heard certain things, it triggered.
And that could be also PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress syndrome, right? Those triggers of seeing individuals, events, having night terrors. I went over some of the things of looking at, bedwetting in children that are sexually assaulted. So looking at all of those behaviors that really show signals of trauma, right? Signs of trauma. And these are for the parents and the people who need to keep an eye out on your children. Now, James, your testament is so deep and it's so thorough that we're at the time and the mark where we have to bring our panelists on. And so we want you to hang in there, because there has to be a dialogue back and forth. And so right now you're looking at the faces of color that are now in the systems that you once were in. And they are active in their community and changing some of the very things that you went through. And so I'm going to start at the top, starting from the right, going to the left. I'm going to make introductions. We have Tasha Dunham, Master Social Worker, Child Welfare Division Chief for the Emergency and Intake Department of the Child Welfare System in San Joaquin. Most of y'all will say she the HNC. You feel me? And so we appreciate her being in that position, right? Because historically, it was held by white males. And so to see an African-American queen in that position, she is going to tell us historically what she's doing to push changes in the child welfare system. We have Adriana Griffin. Welcome, Adriana. She's from the Women's Center Youth and Family Services here in Stockton, California, where they're doing a work. And when I tell you she's a woke sister, she's a woke sister. Come on. Welcome, Adriana. Next, we have Miss Lovely Jacqueline Remo. She's with the Child Abuse Prevention Council. Oh, wow. And she runs a lot of the groups that we have as far as parents who incur children who need support after having sexual assault.
Yeah, that's big.
And next we have Mr. Jason Martin. Jason Martin.
What's up, Jay?
Mr. Jason Martin also is a social worker in the child welfare system at San Joaquin CPS. Wow. He works on the back end. So those children who withstand into the system, he works with those children.
That's important.
So welcome, Jason Martin.
That's important. Definitely.
Next, we have Joshua Brown. Joshua Brown is the CEO and native of Stockton, California. CEO, another HNC.
All right.
CEO of FACES, Faith in Action, and you gotta help me with the acronym because I should have had it.
Community Education Services.
Come on now, and he educated, right? We love to hear from an educated brother. He is the boss of FACES, and so welcome. He'll be talking about what we're doing at the school intervention sites in Stockton Unified School District. And next we have Travis Strickland Sr. coming all the way from the 209 East Side. Travis Strickland is our representative from JJC, Juvenile Justice Center here in San Joaquin County.
First hand.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's
so,
first hand.
So, Mr. Hewitt, when you said your testimony, I heard it. I brought you the truth. So I'm going to ask y'all all to unmute your mics. We're going to go forth and talking about what your intervention is looking like right now for the Black community. And what's your call to justice right now as far as what are we doing for individuals that were in James's position. So we're going to start with Tasha Dunham.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tasha Dunham. Thank you so much for the introduction. You hyped me up, so thank you. I'm honored to be on the panel. I appreciate everyone for being here, and thank you, James, so much for sharing your testimony. It's very, very powerful, and people definitely need to hear more stories like that. So I guess I can do a little bit of an introduction for myself, and then I can talk some more about the child welfare perspective. So I was born in Stockton. I was raised in Tracy, California. I went to undergrad at University of California, Santa Barbara. And then I got my master's at the California State University, Stanislaus, my master's of social work. I actually started working the child welfare system immediately after grad school. But it was interesting when James was talking, I did my first year internship in grad school at the California Youth Authority. And I was there with Bishop Dockery as well. So
Wow.
it's a trip how we had that connection. I didn't realize that.
Wow,
So
that's
he was there, and he was definitely a mentor for me because I was like 21 years old in grad school, didn't have much life experience. And so he definitely took me under his wing. So if he's watching, I just want to acknowledge his
powerful man of
mentorship
God right
too.
there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
Yes.
For sure. So I started working in the child welfare system in 2005, and I worked in the court program, and then I promoted to a supervisor position, the youngest supervisor ever in San Joaquin County.
Come on,
And
y'all.
then in
Wow.
2015, I
Kudos
promoted
to
to the
that
child
right
welfare
there.
division
Come on.
chief. Yeah, so I'm currently in a child welfare division chief position over the front end of children's services. So that's the hotline. And those are the workers that take all the calls from the community or mandated reporters who want to make reports of child abuse and neglect. And then the other program I manage is investigations. And they do that first, kind of knock on the door to find out what exactly is going on in the family. And so one thing that I wanted to be sure to share on this podcast was just really more information about the assessment and investigation process so people will know what to expect.
Because
So
we're not opening the door for you, Tasha.
no,
You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
CPS at the door. We looking through the window like you the police.
For real.
You know,
I understand.
For real.
break it down what we need to expect. I'm just
I
saying.
understand.
And real quick, Tasha,
ahead.
I just want, wow, your resume is so impressive
Come on
to me.
now.
I want to applaud you because, man, that's an awesome thing. We gotta uplift each other. And that right there, what I just heard is powerful. And just go ahead, tell us what you got to say. But I just want to applaud you for real.
Thank you. So I want to explain that when a call comes into hotline, like we get thousands of calls, right? And the hotline workers make a decision about whether we're going to actually have an in-person investigation or if the family is going to be referred to a community-based organization to provide resources to the family. So if we are going to do an in-person investigation, then we have to make contact with the family. And we start by trying to make contact with the children. Before COVID, we would make contact with the children in a school setting. We want to talk to them in a neutral environment as much as possible. Like, it's very difficult to talk to a child about things that are going on in their home when the perpetrator is like in the next room, right? So we really want to talk to them in a neutral environment, establish rapport with them. In the school setting, they would be allowed to have like a school personnel or some sort of support person sit with them to be able to, be there so they're not feeling alone. But it's very important that we establish rapport with them and talk to them about the things that are going on with their family. It should also be noted from the child welfare perspective that we do investigations when the allegations are against perpetrators who live in the family home or they're a parent. So there's been times when it's like a soccer coach or a pastor or someone who has allegations of sexual abuse made against them. Those aren't child welfare jurisdiction issues. Those would be referred to law enforcement.
So those are criminal.
Correct. So there are times where if a child makes a disclosure of sexual abuse, then we have to contact law enforcement to do a joint investigation, because at this point, a child abuse incident has occurred and a crime has potentially occurred. So we contact law enforcement to work together. And although we have two separate roles, we do a joint investigation. And I do know that CPS has a rap of being the same as law enforcement. I mean, CPS, we don't arrest nobody, right? Like, we don't have handcuffs that we could put people in, but we definitely represent an authority figure because we have the ability to make a request to the judges to have a protective custody order signed and have the children removed from the home. Now, we don't like to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. And we're looking at a couple things, not just about the abuse, but also about the protection of the non-offending parent, right? So if you have a scenario where you have a child who's being physically or sexually, for this example, sexually abused by mom's boyfriend who lives in the home, yes, we're trying to find out if the sexual abuse happened And we do that by talking to the child, talking to the siblings, seeing if anyone was witness to it or had knowledge about it. But we're also doing an assessment to determine the mom's ability to be protective. And
So
so,
that's why you'll sometimes remove the child if she can't be
right,
protective. Okay.
right, because it's not just about did the abuse occur. It's also like, can we as an agency walk away and understand and believe that the children can be safe in this home?
And what are those signs, Tasha, to where you make that, decision?
So we do interviews with the children, we do interviews with the parents, and we also look at their history, right? So if we've received multiple calls, if we've had multiple incidents of a child in the home disclosing abuse, and we've come up with a plan before, and then here we are again, then now we have questions about your ability to be protective. And then when we do the initial contact with the family, if the perpetrator, for example, is in jail, and the mom who's a non-offending parent, makes an agreement to follow up with victim witness, to get the child into counseling, to participate in the forensic interviews, right? We're assessing while the investigation is happening to see if the non-offending parent can follow through with the agreements that we made on day one of the contact. And so we're not necessarily just going to pull out on the very first day. There are some things that we need to see before we're able to safely walk away.
Okay, so Tasha, in James' case, when he was open, James, and you're listening, when you were open about the allegation, and it takes a lot of courage for a small child.
Yes, it does.
To tell on somebody that's in the house, and then not really necessarily believed or be removed from being sexually assaulted. So James, the way Tasha explained it, did it happen in that way for you?
Well, it happened. Like I said, it didn't happen in that way in regards to feeling like, the CPS or, those service providers that they really, really kind of defended or really went all out to ensure my safety. It was like just going through just the process of talking to my parent, talking to my mother, talking to me, and because she didn't press charges. And actually, the police was called out. Actually, the police came, but there was no charges brought, and it was like talked down, and they began to focus more on my behavioral problems instead of the immediate situation of me being abused. So
Okay.
really,
Yeah, I can see that. And so there's also a process that we go through. It's called a 241.1 assessment. And that's when we do almost a joint assessment with the delinquency department. So child welfare is dependency. So we're welfare and institutions 300 code, right? And then there's delinquency, which is welfare and institutions 600 code. And there's times when children will commit crimes and the judge will order a 241.1 assessment, which means we see that this child is committing a crime, but is the root of it that something else is going on, right? So then we'll do a joint investigation with probation to find out which system will better serve the family. So, obviously I wasn't a part of your initial investigation. I don't know anything about that specifically. And it does sound like there are a lot of things that weren't done appropriately. And there are times when we do have to talk to the parents, right? And we do have to get agreements from the parents. And parents lie, right? And they say what they got to say to get us out of their door, to get us out of their face, or they minimize it, or they don't even want to accept the reality of it. Like, let me not just say lie, but a lot of times it's just not wanting to accept the weight of exactly what's happened to their child. Right.
Now you see some of these trends, like you said, lie. Let's talk about it because I'm transparent.
Yeah.
You see these trends in the Black community. Do you often see a lot of what James said in the first podcast of wanting to maintain the integrity family unit, right?
Right.
To paint this picture like, oh, nothing's going on.
She's a good mother. We're a good family unit.
Absolutely.
How do your social workers culturally understand how to get through that and be able to assess in a way that's culturally competent, culturally sensitive, and able to talk to those needs?
Well, we actually are developing a program that's called Cultural Brokers, and they have a system set up like that in Sacramento County where you have community members go out with social workers to be able to speak more intentionally with Black families. I'm not going to even minimize the fact that sometimes you can, be saying the words, but it's just not registering. And I can remember as a supervisor, I had one of my workers come to me and she was like, I really don't understand why this mom is not getting what I'm saying. And so I had to get on the phone and talk to this woman, like Black woman to Black woman.
Come on now.
Do you understand that if you refuse to take your child to the forensic interview and you refuse to cooperate with law enforcement, that makes our agency look at you like you're failing to protect your child. Okay. And she's like, I'm not going to protect my child. I said, I understand that you don't think you are, but these behaviors look like this to our agency. She's like, okay, well, if she would have explained it like that, then it would have been different. I'm on my way. Right? So it's like sometimes you need somebody to just say it in a certain way where it's like, look, you don't understand. And I've always said this, and this is why I do feel like child welfare is my calling. Child welfare is not a place for children. The CPS does not raise children. We are an institution. And so me being in the front end, I really try to do my part to make sure that we're keeping children out of the system as safely as possible. I'm not going to minimize the abuse that happens. I'm not going to minimize the fatalities that happen because we have really horrible things that have happened in our community. But there are times when children should be removed, and there are times when they really shouldn't. So it's really difficult when there's a knock on the door and there's that immediate distrust.
Yes.
Because we do represent the government. And so it's just really a fine line, and there has to be a culturally appropriate approach to the family to help them understand we're on the same page. Like we're all interested in safety for your child. So how can we work together on that?
Okay. Thank you, Tasha. And so we'll be going back to you. We have Adriana. Adriana, tell us what services that could have helped James out that are now in session that we're seeing. We got to monitor the comments.
Absolutely. First off, let me just reintroduce myself for anybody that might have just joined. So my name is Adriana Griffith. I work for the Women's Center Youth and Family Services here in Stockton. We serve the entire county of San Joaquin. So that includes Stockton, Tracy, Lodi, Manteca, and everything on the outskirts and in between. I've been with the agency for 4 years. I started in 2016. Before that, I'm a lived experience expert when it comes to domestic violence, domestic sex trafficking, and incarceration. So I'm also formerly incarcerated. Outside organizer for Initiate Justice, as well as a fellow for the WPI State on the Trauma Services Prevention team.
Wow.
Come on now.
Wow, we got some hitters on here.
Run that resume. Run that resume, queen. Hey.
Got some real queens on here. That's right.
Exactly. So I want to just talk on and touch on the services that we have now that really could have helped James and been there for James and as he was going through his journey from start to finish. So starting from the time when you were 7, 8 years old and you originally went through the trauma of being sexually abused as a child, what we have set up in our county is, most folks don't know, is we have what's called a SART. And so it's a sexual assault response team. And so it's a multi-agency made up of my agency, the Women's Center Youth and Family Services, the county. We have victim witness, which is through the district attorney's office, law enforcement. So essentially what happens is this. When somebody calls in to report a sexual assault, whether that's an adult or a child, they are offered what's called a SAFE, which is a sexual assault forensic examination. And at that time, once that's activated, our agency gets called in to meet the victim and their family, law enforcement, at either the Child Advocacy Center, which we call the CAC, and or the hospital, whichever comes first. So because, James, you are a young man, you would have gone to the Child Advocacy Center. So we would have met you at the Child Advocacy Center. An advocate And we are on call for this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we would have been responding to you within 30 minutes at the Child Advocacy Center to talk to you and your family about the services that we have, which would be counseling, peer counseling for the family, support groups, parenting classes. We used to have parenting classes. We currently don't have those up and running right now, but it is something that we are looking to bring back. And really, it's just about support. Because of the age that you were at, most likely we would have referred you over to the Child Abuse Prevention Council, which you'll hear from later. And they really specialize in children. So in the young kids, and that's their specialty, that's their bread and butter. But really, we would have been there to just be there as support for you and for any child that's going through this as they're going through an examination, which could be very, very invasive,
Right.
especially if you're a young kid. And
Yeah.
if anybody has ever seen Law and Order SVU and understanding about a rape kit, it's very, very invasive. They're taking pictures, they're taking swabs, they're looking for DNA. And again, super, super invasive, and it can be very, very uncomfortable and re-traumatizing. So we have the ability as advocates to be there in that examination room with that victim. So they can have their family in there, but we can be there in there as well. And we're talking to them and we're letting them know what their options are. We're letting them know the entire process from start to finish. We're there, whether it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I myself have been called out to a site at 3 in the morning and have gone there and have been there until 5 in the morning. So we're going to be there the entire time. So that's just one. That's just the initial contact, right? After meeting with a crisis specialist. From then on, as you would have gotten older, so let's say somebody gets older. Let's say you were maybe 12, 13 years old at the time. So we have a youth services department, and we have like youth shelters. So we have one youth shelter that's for ages 12 to 17. It's called Safe House. And that is for runaway and homeless youth specifically, for kids that are not in the system or not in foster care. So potentially, I know you mentioned in the first podcast, James, that you had a lot of issues, particularly around your teenage years, especially after you got out. And even before that, Safe House is potentially somewhere you could have gone for respite and said, hey, I'm having these issues. You know, I need a safe place to be. We would have took you in again. It's a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week place. Ages 12 to 17, you come to Safe House, you're getting shelter, you're getting breakfast, lunch, dinner, you're getting food, and most of all, you're getting somebody to listen to you. You're getting an advocate, somebody to listen to you and to hear what's going on in your own life. Not only that, we have supportive services right now. So we have peer counselors, we have case management, case managers that are going to work with you and to not only provide you services with our agency, but also to see what else you need. And so I would just want to back up and say everything that we do at the Women's Center is, first of all, we're a confidential agency. So we're 100% confidential.
Oh, that's powerful.
Anything that anybody tells us stays exactly with us. Unless they give us explicit permission to communicate their information to somebody, we don't report that to anybody. Unless it falls under the guise of mandated reporting, we're not talking to CPS, we're not talking to law enforcement, none of that. And I can speak to as well, I used to, when I first started at Women's Center, I actually worked in Tasha's program, in the CSEC program. And so CSEC is commercially sexually exploited children. And so again, you get a CPS referral, and sometimes it won't always be exploitation. It could just be child abuse. But again, we're gonna go out with the social worker to meet the family in their home. And again, like Tasha said earlier, ain't nobody answering the door when CPS comes. But when we go,
No, yeah, they're
right,
not gonna do it.
so with the social worker, you see somebody else that's not attached to the system, and we're very, very vocal about that and say we don't work for CPS. We're not reporting to CPS. We do get referrals from CPS for our safety net program, and we get referrals for folks that have to do counseling for domestic violence reasons, for sexual assault reasons, for all types of reasons, right? And one of the things that we've had clients tell us is that CPS wants me to sign a release of information so you could tell them about my progress. And one thing we are always telling our clients is you do not have to sign that release of information. I know that's what CPS is telling you, but we're not going to tell you that. We're going to tell you you have a choice. because again, somebody already took your power away. We're not going to be a part of that system. It's going to continue to take power away. So we're all about empowerment. We're all about choices. We're all about offering options, right? And helping you to make the best options for yourself.
Right on, Adriana. Right on,
Exactly.
sister. And so I'm gonna have you drop your information in the chat right now, if
Please.
you can, along with Miss Tasha Dunham, your professional information for people who want to reach out and connect and collaborate. We're going to move on to our next guest on the panel, Ms. Jacqueline Remo with Child Abuse Prevention Center. She's going to tell us a little bit about their services and support for the parents, because sometimes it's off the hook in the home.
Yeah, it is.
And you need some help to
definitely
settle things down when something traumatic happens.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I just want to say, when I grow up, I want to be like Tasha and Adriana. Although I'm older than you guys, but still, you guys are awesome. Anyways, so my name is Jacqueline Remo. I'm with Child Abuse Prevention Council. My degree is actually in criminal justice.
Now, wow.
Services, yeah.
Awesome.
And a lot of my family is law enforcement. So with that being said, one thing that I do notice in our groups, because I do parent cafes, and we do focus on the 6 protective factors. We also do ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And back to what even what James was saying, when we do the ACEs, the questionnaire, one of the things that come up a lot is the sexual abuse. Okay, that's one of the questions that always gets checked as a yes. So in Parent Cafe, it's like a setting where parents can talk about their problems without being judged. You know, I facilitate the groups, and it's just awesome to see how the families are able to open up. Okay, there's like you were saying, James, even before, like maybe your mom didn't have the resources. You know, she didn't have that help. I'm from El Salvador. I wasn't born here. So when we came from El Salvador, we started in San Francisco. So one of my biggest things, like you said, you know, things happen for a reason. You know, I also seen my mom get abused, you know, the domestic violence. I grew up in that chaotic, you know, home environment, no stability, you know, I changed schools a lot. So as I got older, I remember when I was in high school, I was off the hook. Okay. But then people didn't understand, why is she so bad? You know, like how you said earlier, that wall, right?
Yeah.
Whooping people,
Yeah.
just whooping
Yeah,
people, pulling them by their hair and stuff. Look at you, Jack. Lord.
And I'm small. I'm barely 5'1". Okay.
Oh,
But that, you know, it was just my mom and I. So to me, I had to protect her, you know. So I grew up like, you know, trying to protect everyone. So even when I was like, I think my senior project, I did it on, it was called Las Casas de las Madres, which is a shelter for women and their children in San Francisco. And I was like, you know, when I grow up, I want to do something for them, to give them support, because I know how it felt to be that child, to see your mom depressed, you know, not having that support. So, you know, so now even when I do the groups and stuff like that, I empathize with both sides now, because I'm a single parent, you know, with 2 daughters. My oldest just actually turned 20 Wednesday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So, you know, and my biggest thing is just letting them know, you know, hey, there's support out there. Even for the mothers. I actually have, I think one of my parent mentors is with us right now. But I also started, it's called Women's Circle of Stockton, and that's geared for women of color. Rachel's actually joined it, and she's
Jacqueline, can you, when you're done, can you put that in the comments and then I'll pin it?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
You, but definitely back even to with the mental health. You know, I've been in shelters. We do groups in shelters, community centers, schools. And one thing that I always did hear from mainly like African American women is that they don't trust, you know, mental health. So I'm trying to, like, in these groups, I try to, you know, break, like letting them know how important it is, trying to break the stigma, and even Rachel's is sat in some of the groups, and she's trying to, talk to them and things like that. But just they start to open up, and it's amazing how that support, especially
It's a
with
safe
the,
space.
yes, a safe space. They talk about their challenges, things that, back to even hearing about the things that are being swept under the rug. That's the one of the biggest things we hear a lot.
Yes, speak.
In those
Yeah.
Yes,
groups.
it is. That is man.
Just staying right there, Jackie, that's what I really want you to expound on, because that sexual assault that James was talking about, most of them are triggered when they talk about the sexual assault, because they didn't quite, like James said, they didn't quite deal with that information. And so as we're exchanging that within group and we're processing that, you're seeing that even as adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those things manifest as you're older, and people, and like a lot of the times parents don't realize. That's why I love ACEs, because we're able to point out, hey, things that happen between 18 and under, you'll see it as kids, it'll start to manifest as adults, and I can tell you, because I see that with my own issues that I had growing up. Now as an adult, I'll be transparent, I have abandonment issues and things like that. Why?
Wow.
Because of things that happened to me as a kid, because I didn't go to therapy, because I didn't get the help, because my mom thought, hey, therapy's for crazy people,
So
So
therapy is truly important in when a child is experiencing either a molestation experience or just trauma in general. Is that correct?
yes, absolutely. I even had a situation come up at one of my groups, where a mother approached me and said that her son had molested her 7-year-old daughter. You know,
Wow.
And
so
I wanted to ask CPS how you would intervene in that situation, because I know it depends on the age and whatever the relationship is to the incest in the home. But how would a mother who has limited resources and capabilities separate the two?
mhm.
And what resources can she get to try to deal with that sexual assault that happened on the younger one and still love on the older one?
That's tough.
That's a tough
that is a
position
hard,
to be in.
yes, for any parent.
Absolutely. Do you want me to respond now, or I
Yes,
don't want to cut
yes,
Jackie off? Oh,
yes.
okay. Yes, there definitely have been instances where there are children within the family home that are abusing each other. So in those instances, we first want to talk to the child who's abusing the other child to see where he or she learned that behavior and see if they may have been a victim of sexual abuse, and that's why they're acting out on a younger sibling. And then we do have to have the conversation with the mom again about her ability to be protected. So we do have resources like referrals that we make to victim witness, and try to see if maybe there's village members or other people who could be involved for the other child, one or the other child, to live with. Also, we've been working harder to involve the fathers and the father's family. There's a lot of responsibility on the mothers. But the children came from somewhere, right?
Come on,
and
come
so
on.
there,
Yes.
we have
Takes
to pay more attention and include the fathers in our assessment, and utilize the father as a possible placement for the one of the children, either the
Very
victim
good.
or the
Wow.
perpetrating child. So we try to see the family as a whole family unit. And I'm a village child, right? And I'm a part of a village. And so there are times when other people have to step in to help out. And so the child may have to go to another family's home. But again, we try to work as much as possible to keep any of the children from coming into care.
Thank you very much for clearing that up for us, because a lot of people, again, we sweep it underneath the rug, James, because I don't want you to go into the system. You better off here.
Yeah, for real.
Dealing with what you're dealing with in your head. And when did you get therapy for the first time, James?
I was because of a series of of events and me acting out in school and fits of rage. I was referred to go see a psychologist. So around about 8 years old, I seen a psychologist, but at the same time, I was accompany with the psychologist, with the psychiatrist, to prescribe me some medicine. So they really didn't really help me work through what I was going through. And then, I think I think that there has to be, like we were talking about, cultural relativity. Dealing with people that don't come from our community, that cannot relate with some of the disparities that we experience in our Black community.
Right.
That they really can't relate. There's really no empathy there, or no sympathy at all. So they, when I went to the psychologist and the psychiatrist accompanied them, it really wasn't. It was just them going by the book. It wasn't something that they were looking at and interested in what I was going through, why I was acting the way I was acting. So they prescribed me medicine, Ritalin, Wellbutrin, Zephyr. I'm talking about medicine that affects grown people that they didn't took out the market. So that's how I was handling. Drug him up.
Rachel, we've heard that a lot too in group, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it comes from the extended care from not now, because intervention looks a little bit different. But it's still some of the same guidelines, right? With drugs comes with the therapy thing. And a lot of times we got to move to a holistic approach. And so, Jackie, I appreciate you for dropping in on this panel. I want you to drop your information so individuals know where to get into the Parent Cafe to get a support, and also your information, your professional information. We're going to move on to Josh and Jason. They are at the facility of Faces. And so I want you all to kind of collaborate back and forth on what your role is right now for young Black men or individuals that have been assaulted, young children that have been assaulted in our community.
So I go first. I'm Jason Martin, I'm a county social worker. I've been doing that for 5 years. There's a lot of, going back to your question, and the different things that a lot of kids can go through. Sometimes in the system, they could be coming in, and sometimes they can have they could be triggered very easily, just due to their trauma, things they've went through. They kind of lash out, and sometimes it's not always towards you that they can lash out, but sometimes they need somebody to lash out and let it out on. And sometimes where we place them, sometimes where I'm looking for the best fit. I'm trying to see how, whatever we can do to get them to the next level so they can be successful. Because we already know, being that they're of color, that's going to be a challenge. That's already one knock against them. But if their record or anything gets messed up, that's something that's going to follow them somewhat for the rest of their life, primarily when they turn 18. So really get them connected to like the positive resources. If they're able to play sports, that's good. We got avenues, but we know everybody is not going to play sports. Some might get into a trade. Some might get into something they can really, just feel successful in the element, like myself, just when sports was done, I knew I wanted to play. I wanted to do something in helping people. So I feel like I'm in my element in doing that. Right. Some kids are good with their hands. They might be barbers. Some of them, just to be honest, some of them might like to be a tattoo artist. They might want to, get into something that, they can see themselves doing, whether it's music or whatever else. So really, we're trying to help them in all aspects as young men.
Now, Jason, as a Black interventionist, as a Black social worker in this community, you are also flying out of state, placing our children. And so are you still seeing the rates? Are you keeping up with the rates? Are our Black children still staying in the CPS welfare system longer than their counterparts?
So your first question, up until last month, for the last 5 years, I was flying out of state because we had to place our kids in various group homes for behavior challenges or CSEC concerns, or just if they was just in challenges where they couldn't help themselves and they just needed an outlet. So I did that for like 5 years. Unfortunately, I know Tasha can attest to this. Our state representatives within California, they decertified out-of-state group homes for a number of reasons. So now we just recently brought back all of our minors back to San Joaquin County, and then we looked for placements for them within California. So it could be various counties and different things like that. counties and placements that we're looking for that can treat them, whether if it's a sex offender program, if they have issues or something like that we talked about, if it's violence, if it's sex trafficking, we're looking for, we're just trying to see where we can place them where they can be successful. We don't always see the results at that present time, but hopefully they get those skills and then they can utilize them sometime in their life.
So in James' case, where he was passed down from system to system to system to system, where would you have played a role as intervening on his behalf, as advocating, knowing that you are culturally competent, you're understanding the plight of the Black community and how we don't deal with trauma in the family unit?
Yeah.
What would you have said to him that you might be doing now with these children?
Right. That's a good question. So really, for me, sometimes when I get kids on my caseload, sometimes you get a report and you might get information of some of their behaviors and stuff. I read it, but then sometimes I give them an overall, just an open book. I try to let them know, look, I see what's on writing, but I just try to get to know them and build a rapport. Sometimes you already got a label, like I said before, and sometimes people are going to operate and look at you with that label, no matter what you do, no matter what they heard. Sometimes they only going to hear one side of the story. So I just try to really just be empathetic and let them know, I'm here for you, and what can we do to move forward? If they're gonna cry, if they're gonna, what I'm saying, just lash out, I just let them know I'm here, and let them know that I care, and you're not alone. I give them, we got work sales, we got other options where I can come see them. I'm like a big kid myself who crack jokes. I go to their games, talk to them or whatever else, and just make it realistic, because the struggle is real out here. And, we do have a high rate for kids that's in color. We have a very strong disproportionate number of kids that's in color. So just try to let them know that I'm here. It's only at child welfare in Stockton where I'm at. It's only like 4 African-American males within, and I'm one of them.
Wow.
So,
Lord have mercy.
The face itself is big, just letting them know that we here. And I get it.
Representation matters.
It does.
Representation
It really does.
matters. When James, yourself, you were looking for someone. You had at that time Elder Troy Dockery, now Bishop Dockery of Greater Christ Temple, but he was there in his role as a CO, and he was able. You were able to see a light in him, right?
Which is important.
Was very important. And so, Jason, we thank you for your contributions to our community.
Real quick, I got one more question for Jason. And we'll move on. What were some of the triggers that you saw in some of these young kids, and what are some of the ways that you guys would deal with those triggers? This is a question from somebody in the comments.
Can you repeat that one more time? I just want to clearly answer it.
Triggers. So what are some triggers that you noticed with some of these kids? And how did you deal with some of those triggers?
So I could say for some of them, being moved from their home, their environment, and just being placed somewhere else. And, I try to put myself in that situation. If I was living with my family and chaos and stuff, happened, and one day I'm at home, the next day I'm getting woke up, I'm being moved from my city. I'm being moved from all my friends, family. I mean, just to be uprooted like that's traumatizing.
Yeah.
So I empathize with them on that and just try to work with them because, that's not easy. And some of these kids, they move from house to house, group home to group home. And I
have
said
multiple placements like James did.
Right. And I said, the group home is not really a home. You're learning so many different personalities. They're learning staff. Sometimes you're getting staff that really do care, and they it could be a cultural challenge where they might understand everything. Then you get some that just might be there for the paycheck and they just there to do what they got to do. And you might not get the whole full all out support and love. So you try to just see what you can do to meet them right where they're at and just try to be empathize with them. It's not going to be perfect. And I don't promise them that either, but I do try to tell them that, I'm going to be here for you no matter what. And I try to let them, if they go to juvenile hall, I'm there for them. If I have one kid, he went off to prison. I just put some money on his books. I let them know that really I'm going to be here for you as much as possible as I can. I also try to let them know you don't want to get into nothing so big or so heavy or so dangerous or to the point where I can't step in and help you.
Wow.
And that's big. They've been able, they just cry tears because, they say sometimes if I would have listened, if I would have went back to my placement, if I would have never gotten that car, if I would have
That's
never, did this and that. And, you don't try to, beat them with I told you so mentality, but you just try to let them know that, we here and, whatever I can do to help you. So.
Yeah.
Jason, that's powerful because you know what I noticed in what you said, there was a follow-up, you're following up on these young kids that maybe had, went and took the wrong route, didn't listen to the advice, or, and some of them are so traumatized, it's very difficult for them, like in James' situation, he lashed out. That was a form
and
of,
he couldn't attach. Remember, James, you
mhm.
were saying how you couldn't cohesively attach or even have a trusting relationship with an adult. I heard those words.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that we often see within our children who are sexually assaulted, right?
Yeah.
That trust is gone from the safety of adults, right? You got your guard up, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so we're going to now move on to our last two panelists. We have Joshua Brown. Mr. Brown, please tell us what you're doing for the Black community at this moment.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to say it's an honor to be here, to just be able to be a representative of our Black community, especially here in Stockton, the 209, is just a blessing. So I am the CEO and owner of FACES, Faith in Action Community Education Services, and we have one goal. Our goal is to strive to rebuild our community's faith in the education system. So I'm sure, as you all know, the education system wasn't built for people of color.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Not in America.
No, it wasn't.
Well,
through that, we haven't received the proper services to help us become successful. And so even in James's case, where we would have intervened, where FACES would have stepped in, is when you were in the school system and you were acting out, where you were throwing chairs. We would have come in, we would have assessed you to see if you needed a behavior intervention plan. And instead of assessing you to have you removed from the school, we would have assessed you to see how we could help you, how we could have a one-on-one behaviorist with you, or to see if you needed some social emotional counseling, right? And in that social emotional counseling is where we would have addressed that trauma, right? And not just talking about surface level trauma, right? Talking about the trauma that you've gone through for years, right? Since you were 6 or 7 and 8 years old, right? Really addressing the root of that. And so that's what FACES does. We provide educational services such as counseling, such as behavior services. We come in and we do psychological assessments and testing. And what we're doing now, since we have our facility here in downtown Stockton, we're branching out to the community. And what my wife and I have also done is started a nonprofit called New Legacy. So now we're able to offer those services to our community for free, right? And so,
woo,
you know
come
what?
on, y'all.
Real quick, I
Come
just
on,
gotta
I'm talking-
commit.
Hey,
I gotta. You know what? Because
Black excellence
we
in the house.
got three brothers on the panel here. Three young
Come on,
kings.
y'all.
You know what I'm saying?
Come on, y'all.
Who?
Natives of Stockton. Let's
Man,
go.
I'm telling you. I salute all three of
Come
you brothers,
through.
man.
Mm.
You guys are true representatives of what we want to see. What we want our children to see, what we want our Black children to see, and I can speak culturally for our children, man.
And know how to
Kudos
code
to y'all.
switch. Everyone on the podcast
Definitely.
know how to code switch.
I'm
You
sorry.
feel me? Come on,
I had
y'all.
to put that little breaker in there because a lot of the times we don't uplift our Black men like we should. You know what I mean? And just seeing that you guys are all educated. You guys are doing positive, things in the community. I love it, man. I'm gonna let you talk, but I just had to throw that out there, because you guys are, you guys got me like, I'm like, right
it's
now.
It's goosebumps over here.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And my queens too.
Come on,
my queens too. I love y'all,
queens
man.
And
That's
kings on here. Y'all showing
so
out.
We got.
So Joshua, go ahead and drop your information down in the chat. The chat is blowing up currently. Drop your information down in the chat. I mean, people are loving this dialogue, right? People are loving the information that's flowing through right now. They're excited, right? And so we're moving on to our last, but he is not the least, a Stockton native, Travis Strickland Jr. coming to you. He was a football all-star also. Tell us a little bit something about yourself, Travis.
How you doing, Travis?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity just to, be amongst so many local great people. My name is Travis Strickland Sr. I am a Stockton native, born and raised here in Stockton, California. Studied at Savannah State University. Currently, I work with the probation department in juvenile detention. I've been with the department for 13 and a half years.
Look at that.
Come on now.
Look
Dedication.
At that. Look
Let's
at
go.
That. Say that one more time.
Some of y'all can't keep a job at McDonald's. Listen.
I'm telling you, this brother been 13 and a half years.
Come on, y'all.
Man. Oh, my God.
Right there. Y'all call him up and ask him. Ask him how he did it.
Man, I'm telling you.
That's a hard job to work. Go ahead now, brother. I'm sorry. We excited. Hallelujah.
So I know out of this panel, I represent the unpopular portion, right? The law enforcement, especially right now in the climate. But listening to James, just listen back to from last week and even as he continued on today, listening to his story about being 7 and 8 years old and being placed in not one but multiple juvenile halls, and that in itself is a travesty, right? One James Hewitt is too many James Hewitts.
Come on now. Come on.
At 7 or 8 years old, no 7 or 8 year old has any business being inside a juvenile detention facility.
My God.
Yes. And I had to take a step back, and just think about the system in itself, right? We would not hesitate to say that the system failed James. But you got to pose the question is, did the system do what it was created to do? And listening to James, right, the victim was vilified.
Woo! Say it again. Hold on. Say it again. Say it again. Most of our black men are demonized and vilified. Come on, you preaching.
And because of his behaviors, right, that he was acting out of due to his trauma, right? That he was trying to express his inner hurt, and he acted out. And because of his behaviors, he entered into a system where, like he said, things go by the book, right? So you do a behavior, this is the punishment for your behavior. And for James and so many others, and even looking back in early in my career when I started, the juvenile correction system was heavy on punishment, right? You do this, and this is the consequence of your actions. And it wasn't until I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, you start hearing this buzzword of trauma-informed care. It started floating around the department, and we started attending trainings dealing with trauma-informed approaches in the trauma-informed care. And in the corrections field, things don't usually change unless legislation changes.
Come on now.
Right. And in 2018, there was a Senate bill 1143 had passed, and it was dealing with room confinement and solitary confinement. And listening to James, how he said he was in the psych ward, in the padded room, in the straitjackets, in the smocks. All of those things again are traumatic experiences that's just recycling his trauma, right? It's the same trauma dressed up in a different form. But James was made and stigmatized because of his behavior, right? He said he was sedated and hog-tied and this and since then a lot of legislation has changed, right now, if an 8-year-old, if the law enforcement tried to bring a 7 or 8-year-old into my facility, we're not going to take them.
Come on now.
Come on.
Come on now.
Things have changed where, you know what, you gotta contact CPS, safe house, somebody, but they won't stay in juvenile hall. There's PACT assessment. There's a tool in our Macy, is another tool that's used at the booking process to try to get as many kids out, right? They come in and, we're trying to send them home as much as we can. And what these systems are meant to do is to take the bias out of the decision making on who stays or who goes into the institution. Last couple of years, I've been involved in the implicit bias training in our facility, and the decisions that we make unconsciously, maybe from our own trauma, we oppose our decisions on the kids that's coming in based on things that we experienced ourselves, but the assessment tools are in place to eliminate those biases.
Wow,
right?
that's big. That is big right there, because that had to be developed.
Yeah, it did.
Between the time that James left. You left when, James?
2002.
Right. So it took what, about 18 years for assessment like that to be implemented. So go ahead, Travis.
And and most recently, again, there's another legislation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Senate Bill 823, which is the Juvenile Justice Realignment. And with this new Senate bill, as of July 1, 21, the Department of Juvenile Justice, or CYA, where James was housed, they're not taking any more intakes. And by 2023, their doors are closing.
Wow. So what is the push? Come on, y'all.
Well, it needs to close because it's housing most of us.
Come on.
I'm just
clap
being real.
Clap it up, y'all. So that is good news, right? And
Real good news.
Man, James all for it. So what is the push to do? What are we doing with our children now? How are we shifting? Where are we going?
So what's happening is a lot of those kids who would have went to CYA, they're staying at the local juvenile halls. And with this realignment, and just listening to some of the other panelists who have community-based organizations, the floodgates are open as far as opportunities to get involved in what's going on in juvenile justice. If you guys are not familiar with the Senate Bill 823, I encourage you guys to get familiar with it and take advantage with your community-based organizations to get involved and make a difference. And with that, with the collaboration with the probation department, a lot of community-based organizations and advocates are being allowed to be involved with decision-making, with treatment, with different classes and stuff that will be offered in the facility. So there's ample opportunity. The rules are changing, right? The book is being rewritten, when it's dealing with juvenile offenders. And listening to James, and I think it was Tasha, or the question was posed to, what do you do with when you have siblings, right? And since I started in 2007, I noticed the trend, with the sex offenders, and most of them were siblings or older cousins, or they wasn't being victimized at the hand of adults.
Wow.
And I know for me, it was an eye opener, to the point, I have small children. I'm like, man, they're not going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't know who's there, but a lot of the trauma was being reciprocated to the younger siblings. And that's something, you know, and for us in the corrections, we catch it on the back end, right? Um, as far as prevention and things like that, we're not, you know, from my viewpoint, you know, I'm custodial. So once they come, right, there are certain things that we are bound, you know, just by, you know, laws and things that we have to do. Um, but like you guys said, representation matters,
Yeah.
right? There's I've seen a lot of brown and black faces in my time there, and hopefully, you know, I can be that Bishop Dockery to one of the other kids that, you know,
Come
he
on
was
now.
to
Yeah.
James,
Come on now.
and just be that, you know, that beacon of hope.
But
Um,
Travis, not to cut you off, I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna go back to what you were speaking about, and you saying it's unpopular. Your position is unpopular, and I'm gonna tell you the misconception of your position being unpopular. You know, us in the black culture, in the Hispanic culture, you know, we see the police or anybody in law enforcement that is black as unpopular, but with you being in that position, I'm just going to be honest, you know, and you're seeing people like James come through. We need people like you, and a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand how important it is for our young kids that are going through trauma-infused situations to see a face like yours and to see a heart like yours as well. You know, because sometimes, you know, you have, and I'm not saying all, but you know, you have some of the other ones that don't necessarily understand, you know, the trauma that, you know, our culture is experiencing. Why? Because they haven't grown up in our households. And you know, and like you have grown up, and like you know, and like you can understand, you know. So
And they have that implicit bias too, where they bring in, right? Our
they have that bias. Yeah.
Some of our counterparts really believe, well, they're ghetto, and those are the things that happen. They associate ghetto-ness with blackness.
Yeah, definitely.
And they think that we're supposed to go through certain things. So a lot of times we find them also working in those systems, and they bring those biases with them. So
and
how do you all deal with those type of counterparts that deal with implicit bias? How do you nicely put them in their lane about the
so
black community?
so one, you have to have that conversation, and you got to have a real conversation, right? And for me, a lot of people assume, right, because I work in law enforcement, right, or I work in, you know, in the juvenile hall, that I can't understand or I can't relate to them, not understanding that I live the same plight that they lived.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
I grew up in I grew up in Philbert Arms on the east side, right?
Come on
I grew
now.
up in the same environment, you know, that a lot of the people that I supervise grew up in.
Speak that.
It was just, you know, by the grace of God, I was, you know, able to make it through and be in the position that I am now. But I see myself in a lot of those teenage boys, right? I see myself, I see my brothers, I see my cousins, I see my close friends, and in the same kids that I'm supervising. So to empathize for me is just being honest with myself, right? That could have been me, right?
Man,
that could have been my brother. That could have been, you know, my friends. You know, that was my family members, right? You know, we got family members, little cousins and stuff that's in the system now, right? And our counterparts, right? They have to be held accountable, right? And they have to be educated about their assumptions, right? They see us and they assume that, you know, we agree that we agree with their opinions, and that's just not the case.
That's not the case. And you know what? You got some brothers on here that's representing you, Travis. They're saying shout out to Mr. Strickland. That's Dontel Ramirez. Also, we got Henderson that's in the house. He's often supportive. And so they are very proud. I see a lot of your family members that have come on here to support you all tonight.
Yes.
And so I want you all to open up your mics and just let us know anything else that you wanted to give us tonight, because it's been a worth of information.
Yeah,
remember,
definitely.
we are streaming this live. We're looking at the comments. people are thanking, you know, everyone for just being vocal and just being transparent. And is there anything else, Joshua, Jackie? I know your time was kind of limited. Joshua and Jackie, can you kind of talk about the school contracts that you all have with SUSD? That's big.
Do you want to go first,
I'll
Josh?
let you.
Okay. Go ahead, you go first.
Okay. So for us, we actually contract more with the charter schools. Contracts that we had with SUSD, we actually provided a summer school program where we went in and we were able to provide some of the counseling, the small group counseling, the one-on-one behavior services. And so we really want to get into working with some of the charter schools out here, and we're not only here in Stockton, we're also located in the Bay Area, where we are contracting with some of the charter schools out there. But our whole goal, like I said earlier, is to really focus on educating our community and letting them know that with our services, your kids are no longer falling through the cracks. Right? We've had too much of that, of where our own kids are slipping through the cracks. So we want to make sure that we provide those services to help them succeed, and know that even though this education system wasn't built for us, we can still make it through and graduate and go on to better our lives and have long lasting journeys to where we can come back and tell our stories.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Excellent, man.
Yes.
I mean, y'all spitting a lot of game. Y'all got me just hopeful for Stockton. Come on, somebody. Can I get an amen?
Yes,
Jackie,
definitely.
and so do you want to talk about some of the contracts before we end tonight?
Actually, yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the services Child Abuse Prevention Council has to offer to the community. FA, home visitation, and we have a really good program that we just launched. It's called JourneyWorks. And the JourneyWorks program provides home visitation services to address mental health and substance abuse challenges. And what they do is the case management. The mother has to be between either pregnant or the child has to be 5. CalWorks. They have to have CalWorks. But it's a really great program because they even help families with housing. We offer therapy also. You know, in between 0 to 21, as long as they have a full scope Medi-Cal. Also suicide prevention and the TAPE program also. I also put our agencies, it's www.nochildabuse.org. If you guys can go on there, if there's any service, there's got a lot of great services. And I encourage you guys to just kind of check out Parent Cafe. You know, we offer a lot of different resources. If there's something that we don't have, my thing is I will go outside. I don't have to just stick within. My thing is helping the families.
Yes.
You know, and then that's the biggest thing. James, I did have a question for you that's been just, I got to ask him. Before the age of 7, did you have behavioral issues?
Before the age of 7, did I have behavioral? I had mild behavior issues compared to what my behavior was after. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And see, those things we talk about during Parent Cafe. Our thing is we talk about like signs. We talk about different parenting styles, things to notice with our kids. Back with ACEs, we are all trauma informed in our agency. Each program is trauma informed, and we all do ACEs. If you guys have any questions, we actually just started another program. It's ACEs Aware, like they do trainings and things like that. We also have the Lisa Project. So if you guys have any questions, please go on our site. A lot of great information. I also put my information on there. And thank you to everyone for just kind of giving back to our community. And thank you, James, for sharing your story. And that I pray that people come forth, you know, because as you can see, people are coming out and they're feeling more comfortable. And it just takes that one person. So
Come on.
It takes that one person and that true person to walk in the will of God. And so we're going to open it up to the panel to say the final words before we get back to our special guest, James Hewitt, to say a final word, whatever you want to say. Miss Tasha Dunham, you have something that you wanted to say.
I just wanted to say that, so child welfare is similar to probation. We are a responsive agency, right? Like called the fire department. So when people contact us, we're responding to things that are happening in the community and in the family home. So James, for your situation, there was a lot of trauma that had happened in your home before the other agencies even got involved, right? So my kind of call to action for the community would be to really heal the trauma that's happening within your own homes so that the government agencies don't even have to be involved, right? So if you take advantage of the services that are offered from Adriana or exactly, or Jacqueline or Josh, then the issues can be resolved before the government has to step in. Because like Travis was saying, there are some times when there's just rules and regulations that we are bound to. And so we can't just disregard those. And so I just want to kind of put that out there as a call to the community to really seek out help with the community-based organizations and within your village, within your churches, so that the other agencies, the government agencies, don't even have to get involved.
Come on now. That's powerful.
That right there. That right there. Ain't nothing to say after that. Look, okay? Y'all open up your ears. You hear me? You getting free game tonight.
Yes.
All right.
You don't gotta pay.
Rebel Ray, listen. Rebel Ray and Art Collins brought it to you. You feel me? You heard it from the victim survivor side, and you heard it from all the interventionists that you might incur. Thank you, Jesus, if you don't do something.
And two, I want to open it up real quick to give Miss Adriana Griffith, Josh, Jason, and Travis a final word as well. Starting with Miss Adriana.
Dope. Thanks. This was so powerful. I'm just so honored and incredibly humbled to be a part of this today. This is amazing. There's so much power here. But just a final word. There was a lot in the chat and just this whole conversation about representation and how representation matters, and it's so true. So I just want to leave with this final word. There's a lot of services throughout all of our agencies that could be very, very beneficial to our community as a whole. But it really isn't going to make a difference if we are not in the seats of power. And that's one of the things that I've learned.
You nailed it.
We need to be out.
Hey, you nailed it.
That being said,
come on now.
Center Youth and Family Services hosts training twice a year. It's called Victim Assistance Training. We do it in the spring and we do one in the fall. You can come and it's a free training. It's 69 hours, so it's a big time commitment. But you get certified as a sexual assault and domestic violence counselor. And I'm telling you, you can pour back into your community. And this is a stepping stone to more power. Like I said, this is where I started. And now I'm in a fellowship working with people in the Capitol, instituting policies and legislation that will become law. I'm saying I'm not might, but will become law.
Come on now. Manifest it, Queen.
So please take advantage of these services. And Women's Center, we're not only dealing with current traumas. If you're sitting in this chat, if you're sitting listening to us and things are coming back to you, or maybe you know somebody that experienced something 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they can still come to Women's Center and still receive the same services. And it's just all about support. And it's just all about helping you to figure out what's happened to you in your life and why you are the way you are and why you do the things that you do. It's all about support. It's all about support. My name is Adriana, and that's me. I'm out.
Thank you, Queen. Jason Martin.
It's all love. Appreciate y'all for having me on. Whatever we can do to help y'all, we want to do it. We just a part of the village. James, I love you, man. You know, just as teenagers, and man, I commend you, man. And just for you stepping out as a male, you open up a platform for a lot of people that's watching it or probably didn't log on, but they're gonna watch it tonight or whatever else. So I salute you, bro, and I love you, man.
Likewise, man. I love you too, brother. Really.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, CEO, Mr. Josh, man? How you doing, brother? Final words?
I'm doing good. No, thank you guys for having us on. James, I don't know you personally, but I definitely resonate with your story. We've worked with many kids who had similar situations as you. And so I thank you for coming out and telling your story. For me personally, growing up in a household where we were, told not to say anything, not to say what happened outside of our household, I can definitely understand that you being able to get help and understanding why you were vilified and things like that. So I definitely appreciate it. And I don't want it to stop here. The work needs to continue throughout our community. Right. And on that note, Faces, we're also opening up our Medi-Cal billing, so now we can offer those services to the community, because it's about us, right? It's about building ourselves, right? And it's about empowering each other. So thank you guys again. I appreciate it. You can find us at www.facesedu.com.
And Josh, can you put that in the comments so that those that want to get that aren't watching right now, that will watch, can get that information?
For sure.
Thank you so much. Travis Strickland, how you doing, sir?
Travis, you brought the word tonight.
He brought the word.
Come on
You
now.
know, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity to be amongst so many great individuals in our community. Before I leave, I just want to leave a challenge to the parents, right? Any parents that's listening. Me being a parent of 7, right? We have to protect our children.
Yeah.
And we have to protect our children at all costs. And whether that's from a family member or a stranger, right? We have to protect our children. Let's not deflect the accountability, on the premises of saving face for our family. Right? Yes, hold ourselves and hold our families accountable. Let's hold our communities accountable as well.
Yes.
Thank you so
wisdom. Much.
That's wisdom, y'all.
That is wisdom, like to the fullest, right?
Come on
there.
now.
Like, and you guys all had a bunch of stuff to bring. And I want to end this with kind of going into detail a little bit about your healing process, James. And just you taking your time to just discuss that for anybody listening right now that has had a situation similar to yours and they don't quite know the steps to take to get where you are at right now. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm all ears, James.
Yeah, I know we wrapping this up, but I just want to definitely, I know they left, but I definitely want to commend. I would salute everyone that was on the panel. I mean, that was phenomenal. I definitely wish that all those services was there when I was growing up, but I thank God that those services, community and faith-based services is being provided now at a greater level, and a more proportionate level. And I commend every one of them that was on the panel. You are the sheroes and the heroes of our community that's rescuing our children, that have been victims of abuse. And I commend you on what you're doing. And I'm just excited. Actually, when I got out, I actually, started working as a youth advocate, working as a youth representative with the mentoring center out of Oakland, California, and the Pacific News Service out of San Francisco. So, as I said, I'm actually we've done a lot of work to try to change the system. So, to change legislation. So when I hear my brother Travis give those legislations that's been passed and the things that are changing and how the community is able to become more involved, it just makes it all worth it, to see the work, the things that I went through, how God brought me out and how God allowed me to be a part of bringing change to the system, speaking at the Capitol, working with senators, Congress, creating models that we can bring back to the state of California to change the system, to make it more about transformation and rehabilitation than just correction and confinement. And so just to see that God is good. As a youth advocate, He's allowed me to travel all around the country. He's allowed me to speak at the Saving Black Men in America Summit did a documentary with Mario Van Peebles and some of the greatest thinkers in the Black community, from Dr. Cornel West, Monroe Dyson, all those great scholars, leaders. And he allowed me to speak at the Liberty Club, the same platform of President Bill Clinton, General Colin Powell. We've been honored at the San Francisco Giants Stadium in front of 40,000 people for the work I've continued to do. After God began to do a work in me, He was doing a work through me, and so I thank God for that. But yeah, the healing process, like I said, one of the things that will start the healing process as I begin to hear all the panelists talk, and when kids go through all of that, the fear of letting anybody else in, of feeling like that any adult or anybody would come and just continue to victimize them, putting up with that wall, to ensure that won't happen again. So that this attachment from people and letting people in, I think that young people need to not hear that you care, but they need to see that you care through your actions, And I thank God for the Bishop Troy Dockerys. I thank God for the James Pratt. I thank God for the Dr. Marlon Gales that God brought into my life going through my healing process. It's so important, to have people, to have presence there, that will help initiate that healing, that will help support that healing. Like Jason said, he didn't judge those kids, for their behaviors, because he was sympathetic and empathetic of what they went through. And just having people there that will just support you in your healing process, no matter what that looked like. And sometimes that's not always an easy process, because I thank God for the Bishop Dockerys, the James Pratts, the Marlon Gill. I was difficult, it wasn't always easy for Dockery. I cussed him out. I've been delivered. Praise the Lord. All those different things. I said I hated him, but he showed unconditional love of Jesus to me. And like I said, he literally loved the hell out of me, for real. And sometimes you have to meet young people right where they are, in their pain. And a lot of times the reason why young people can't get their healing, wonder why they put walls up, because people try to make them feel like it was something wrong with them, make them judge them and prejudge them, and put all these measures in place for them to even get help. So they just give up, because it's like, what do I have to go through all of this for just to even get any type of help? And so, having people there that show love, that show concern, that's one of the biggest.
That's the biggest thing. And James, I wanted to tell you too, in the comments and looking back at the videos, the video that we had prior to this podcast, it was so amazing to see the young people that you touched and you reached, even the older people.
Yes.
By how you were able to paint this picture.
Yeah.
And what trauma looked like, and now what survival healing looks like. You hear me? That's powerful in itself. And so we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being our brother. Thank you for showing the way, for the Black community, and for that hidden voice that now can be seen on a mountaintop. God is using you, and we pray that you continue to go forth and be blessed by God. And so we ask that you just walk in your calling. We want to thank you.
Thank you, James. Your story is going to heal a lot of people, whether you know it or not. A lot of people are being even healed right now. A lot of people, you are the voice for a lot of people who don't have the courage to come out as you did. Your story even touched me. I and everybody that I've come in contact with since last week, have been touched by this story. And I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You are somebody in God, and you are a mighty warrior in God, man. Thank you. Thank you. thank you for your incredible story and testimony that's going to touch a lot of lives.
Thank you, James.
I appreciate you both, and I thank God for you even creating this platform and having the boldness and the audacity and the courage to even have this platform and to be able to even give a voice to people like me. And I appreciate you, and God's going to bless y'all for being selfless.
Yes.
Because
I
a lot of
receive
people, and I declare that, and because the scripture says that after thou been converted, go strengthen your brother. And
Whoa.
so,
that was knowledge drop right there.
And so I have the responsibility to do what I do, and I thank God for every gift that He's given me as a recording artist. I'm using my voice through my music. I'm using the voice through the power of the spoken word, through preaching the gospel across the country.
The Comeback Kid.
The Comeback Kid. That's my single.
Come on.
People need to know that you can come back from any devastation in any situation. People need to know that. And so we're encouraging. I thank God. My song has been multiple award nominations right now. So I give God praise because it's touching people.
Give praises to that.
Yeah, it's touching people. So I give God praise for you guys.
Thank you. And we wanted to present something. We love all of y'all.
Yes.
All the panelists that are still there, and also James. We wanted to give you a small gift. We'll be mailing this to you.
Yes,
and
all the panelists.
Inside this small gift,
show them what we got inside.
You'll be getting a Against All Odds t-shirt.
There we go.
You'll be getting an Against All Odds t-shirt.
To all the panelists and James.
You'll also be getting your own water bottle Against All Odds.
There we go.
Right? And a coffee mug with an actual gift card inside.
Yes.
Get some coffee.
Wow.
Yes. Get you some coffee.
It's a small token of our appreciation, but we want to let you know that we love y'all.
We do.
So, and you can find all these items for everyone else. Where can you find them at?
You can go to Against All Odds Apparel.com. You will know because you'll see me on there. So that will give you the idea of who what website it is. But yes, we definitely appreciate all the panelists. Everybody,
they brought it today.
They did.
And let me tell you, that's Black excellence in the San Joaquin Stockton area, y'all.
Definitely.
Come on, tell somebody about it. We ain't just about bang bang shooting up.
We ain't about that. We just ain't about that.
It's movement on the ground. Let's go. Stockton on the map.
Come on. You ain't gotta leave Stockton
let's go.
To grow. We growing out here, and we
bless your community first.
Yes, definitely. But thank you again to each and every panelist, especially my brothers, man. Like, the queens, much love to y'all.
Yeah, my queen shout out.
But Josh, Jason, Travis, we really love y'all.
Travis
man.
brought the word.
He brought the word, didn't he?
And he was kind of smoky with it too.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
He was throwing in these little laws. I gotta look it up.
They had the laws and all that.
I gotta look that up. And then Jason came with, what I'm saying, with
super fly guy, laid back.
Well, he came with a lot of powerful information because he's following up with these kids. He's in there and he's seeing it firsthand. And then you got Josh, you know what I mean, who comes from the educational perspective.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
We like that multifaceted.
Yes.
But I gotta talk about my queens.
Go ahead, go. I have to talk about the brothers.
You know what I'm saying? On that Black Panther stuff, I like that. Y'all don't know about her, but her spirit Black Panther, but she smooth with it. You know what I'm saying? She gonna infiltrate. And we thank God for the HNC.
Come on.
That's historical.
That is
thank God
big.
for Tasha
you
Dunham.
Hear me? Y'all don't understand how big that is.
Coming through the ranks and changing our perspective on CPS
and history. Shoot, I mean, like
one
of her kind. You know what I'm saying? It's very, a lot of kudos to her because it takes a lot to rise up within the ranks, and to become the person that she has become. Yeah. I love that.
Come on,
I
y'all.
love that.
So we're gonna sign off. We're at the 2-hour mark. I know we are long-winded.
I didn't hear all the queens. Because we got two more queens. We got Jacqueline.
And then we got
sorry, that's
my friend.
Yeah.
That's my friend. Jacqueline, a queen for real.
Oh yeah,
Came through the ranks and just doing her thing out here and supporting each other.
Definitely.
And did I miss anybody else?
Yeah, you missed one.
I missed one more.
More.
Who was it? It's been a long day for me. I worked too, y'all. I worked too. Who was the last one I missed?
Mrs. Griffin.
No, I talked about Adriana. I got Adriana.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah. So
Tasha, Mrs. Griffith,
yeah, we got everybody.
I'm just trying to make sure you on point with your queens, because
Usually
I'm on point with my young kings, man. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? I love y'all. Hey, and James, you a young, powerful young king, man.
Yeah, we salute you.
Salute you. And you know what? We love y'all and we appreciate y'all. Don't we appreciate them?
Yeah, all day long. All day long. So y'all pray for us. We're gonna go and do this thing in the Lord, and we're gonna keep bringing courageous conversations and being transparent.
Yes.
Right? That's the main thing. Being transparent.
Being transparent, you know, and being open so people can get healed. You know what I mean? We love y'all. Thanks, James.
Thanks,
again.
James. You're a hero.
You're a hero.
You're our hero.
God bless everybody out there, and I hope y'all, you know, especially to the parents out there, you guys seen it from the actual perspective of the child, you know, and well, he's not a child, but we're saying like when he was a child.
The child's perspective. Now as a grown king,
yes,
you know, he found his sacred purpose.
Definitely.
He found his sacred purpose, and through all of that trauma, it's a testament. Share,
comment, because this is such a powerful segment.
Now tell them how to, because we never tell them how to follow. Follow us and you know, put the notifications on, because it's
hit the notification bell. Yes, I'm happy you know that.
Yeah, the notification bell will let you know when we're going live.
And it will when you hit that notification bell, you know, it's gonna pop up on your screen on your cell phone, and you can click right onto it. You don't have to worry about going to search and where's Against All Odds podcast. It'll just pop right on.
It'll pop right up, y'all. And that's on all the platforms that we're on right now.
Yes.
We also have our own YouTube channel. So we're developing. Y'all stick with us. And remember that the Lord said, I got this.
Come on.
Back on up. Y'all like my little sign? I like that. I said, oh, I need that for the pot.
It said, God, I got this. God. And that's real.
This. Sometimes you gotta back on up, y'all. Some of y'all in your own way.
Yes.
Love
y'all.
Love y'all.
Salute.